and I'll crush you like a paper cup.
So now it's time to get refocused on week 10 and talk about the players that we want to start or we want to sit. So, Adam, I'm going to go to you first with your crush of the week. I like it.
Yeah, look, Crush may be a little heavy-handed with it, but he's definitely someone who I think is very much so in flex conversations this week, and that's Wan'Dale Robinson. He's been pretty heavily targeted a good handful of times this season. We're going on 2 back-to-back off weeks, but the matchup is much, much better this week against Carolina. Look, they've given up, I believe it's 40 more points than anyone else in the NFL to this point this season. So this is one of those matchups where you're just trying to get players that are playing Carolina. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. Unless the New Orleans Saints, there are going to be some points to be had, and even then they put up 20. So playing against Carolina is pretty good. And the Giants are one of the teams that are bad enough that this actually could be a back-and-forth affair where for a lot of teams it's, all right, run game, run game, run game. The Giants are bad enough. The passing game should still be involved throughout, which makes this especially interesting. He, to me, is the second most interesting target through the air for the Giants. Chris, I completely agree with what you said earlier in the show in the sense that Daniel Jones played good this past week. He at least good enough to where he was not the reason they lost. And with that, I feel like I don't want to say I can trust this passing game, but enough that, we'll get to my bust here in a minute, but he's in the same range as kind of that flex option, and I would much rather play Wan'Dale Robinson despite Pittman, there's the giveaway, but Pittman being 34 on ECR and Wan'Dale Robinson being 40, I would very much so flip those personally, if not be a little bit higher on Wan'Dale.
Now, I'll add another thing to that. We don't know if Darius Slayton's going to play this week because he's in concussion protocol right now. So if that winds up happening, what we have seen is Wan'Dale Robinson have a 25% target share. So you're in PPR leagues. Adam, I like it. That's what I'm saying. I like it a lot. It's a nice little sleeper move there. Chris, who are you crushing on this week?
Yeah, I know I was like Adam said, this isn't supposed to be a strong crush, but this is a guy that people seem to be nervous about, and I would not be nervous, and that's CeeDee Lamb, ECR 20. CeeDee Lamb is still a receiver 1. As Dan talked about, back in 2022, when Cooper Rush was the quarterback for 5 weeks starting, CeeDee Lamb averaged 10 targets. He was a QB, top 10 finish twice of those 5 starts. This guy is not somebody you need to necessarily feed. They're playing the Eagles. I know the Eagles secondary numbers don't look great, but they haven't played anybody that you're necessarily worried about. CeeDee Lamb can have a great matchup versus secondary for the Eagles. CeeDee Lamb, as long as he's healthy out there, is one of those guys that you have as a receiver 1 that you can trust in your lineup this week, no problem.
Yeah, I think part of that is probably the question mark around the AC joint of the shoulder. Again, something else we're going to cover tomorrow night with Dr. Brian Scott at 8 p.m. on social media at FF Advice Network. If you want to tune in live, it'll be available to you later on your favorite podcast app, Operation Domination Football. But I think it has part to do with it. Chris, though, I'm with you. The targets are going to be there. The offense has to be centered around CeeDee Lamb. If he's out there, he's still a wide receiver 100%.
Well, Dan, Jonathan Mingo might steal his target, so we have to be worried about that.
Oh, Jonathan Mingo. My God. I heard someone said this well. It's like they must have loved him in the college draft evaluation. And yes, that could be true. Who else was giving up a 4th round pick for Jonathan Mingo? I mean, at some point, just come on. Just come on. Anyway, I digress. We are talking about the guys we crushed this week, and no one's touching Jonathan Mingo with a 10-foot pole. So let's get me into my crush of the week, and this is Taysom Hill. Okay, now ECR has him as a tight end 10, so you all probably are considering starting him, but I think he's higher than that, man. I think he's a mid-level tight end 1 this week. He's now had 2 games where he's had 9 targets over the past 2 games, so all of a sudden he has a pass-catching role. Kendry Miller's on IR. We don't know if Jamal Williams is going to play. Wasn't able to play last week. So he's the RB2 behind Alvin Kamara and reassuming the red zone role. Look, I talked about this before, saying cautiously optimistic with tight ends, and especially in a heavy bye week. Once you get outside the top 5, 6, they're all pretty much the same. You're begging for a touchdown. I don't know who else has a better shot for a touchdown this week than Taysom Hill, given the lack of options. And all of a sudden, now he has a predictable floor to go with it. So I have him as a mid-level tight end 1. Taysom Hill has to be in your lineups this week. Now, on the flip side of this, we got to talk about the guys that we want to sit that maybe everybody else is thinking about starting. So, Adam, when I go to you, your bust, I know you kind of gave it away, but who's your bust this week?
It is Michael Pittman. And look, whether it's the back injury, whether it's being lethargic through his routes, whether it's a combination of both, the fact of the matter is the usage was not where it needs to be. One reception in back-to-back weeks. Look, that's not entirely on him. The quarterback play of both of those games could have been better. There's no denying that. The offensive play calling could have been better in both of those games. There's no denying that. But look, the ADOT for him is way up, and it's because he's really only being used on routes down the field. Even when he's running crossers, it used to be you'd get a lot more intermediate stuff, and now it seems a whole lot more like, posts and, 15-plus yards down the field. And look, that ADOT was certainly being pushed north a lot because of Richardson, but even with Flacco, it's been much of the same. I brought up earlier when we were talking about Joe Flacco that the Bills' pass rush is kind of this strength for a guy that is being used predominantly down the field. I really don't like Pittman's chances this week. Someone like Downs, I see a much stronger argument for, right, where the targets can kind of flow underneath. He can kind of be a check down guy. Maybe the tight ends get involved, things of that nature. But with Pittman specifically, with both how he's being used, with both his recent output, I just don't see a massive turnaround in store for him this week in particular, at least, especially, given that he's missed a practice and, it seems like he's probably going to play, but it may be limited. It does seem that injury is, impacting him to some degree as well, so.
Yeah. It's hard to disagree. I love Michael Pittman too, but man, it's been rough this year. Chris, who are you busting this week?
Look, this guy's not somebody you have to bench because he is coming off 10 targets, which he turned into a massive 32 yards. He's only had one top 10 finish this entire season at the position, which he had 11.1 points with his great finish. This guy's only had double digits twice this season, despite continuing to have the usage. Everybody wanted to be involved, and that's Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid's taking on a Colts defense that's not very good versus tight end position. I'm pretty excited about it. ECR tight end 6 this week. As they had talked about Taysom Hill, we talked about Hunter Henry earlier in the show. Different tight ends that are coming. I like the other options more than I like Dalton Kincaid. This guy's only had over 50 yards twice this entire season, despite the usage. Like I said last week, the 10 touches, had 32 yards. He's been getting about 30, 40 yards. That's what you're basically looking for out of Dalton Kincaid, no matter whether he plays a lot or doesn't play a little. Whether he gets targeted a lot or gets targeted a little, you're getting about 30 yards or 40 yards out of Dalton Kincaid. Isn't a guy that I'm necessarily excited about having in my lineup, especially if I have other better options on my roster. Dalton Kincaid's my bust of the week.
Anytime Chris gets a shot at Dalton Kincaid, he takes it. You're not wrong. I just wanted to point out that you take it. All right, so let's get to my bust. The guy you got to sit. I feel like people are just like, they were just looking for a reason to plug him back into the top 12, and it doesn't really make that much sense to me. It's Patrick Mahomes. I get it. Right now, ECR got him at QB 11. I got him ranked at QB 21. Guys, I know he had his best fantasy display. I talked about this in the show in the past. Whenever somebody does well on a primetime game that everybody's watching, they all come rushing in the fantasy the following week. It was his first time this year that he finished inside the top 12 the entire year. Tampa Bay's defense is the worst, or if you were looking for fantasy points, the best at giving up fantasy points to the quarterback position. Okay? The best. So guess what? I don't love the matchup this week against the Denver Broncos. Yes, the Denver Broncos had a hard time with the Ravens. They got overpowered by the run game, and that opened up play action for Lamar Jackson to get his 3 passing touchdowns. I know Hunt's been good. Chris, you alluded to it earlier in the show, and it's been impressive that he's been good week in and week out, which has been the biggest shocker to me of anything. But he's not overpowering anybody. You're playing to Denver's strengths now. You're more of a pocket passing team, but they'll be able to get the blitz and run their defense accordingly. Mahomes is not finishing in the top 12 this week, guys. It's not going to happen. Sorry. I know you wanted to be back in a this week for Mahomes. So that's my bust for the week. Guys, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Quick one. We kind of lost a segment out there, but it was a quick one. We'll be back next week, like we always are, 9:30 on the Fantasy Football Advice Network on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe if you have not done so already, and check out Operation Domination Football on your favorite podcast app. We'll also be back tomorrow night at 8 p.m. on social media live at FF Advice Network, both on Twitter and Facebook. And we'll be launching that show on YouTube the following day. And of course, check out on your favorite podcast app there too. We did have a last second question here, so let's just get to that real fast. Juan here. Would you drop off the bench for defense? Wan'Dale, Madison. I'm not going to go through all the names here. Is there a name that sticks out, Adam, to you that you drop to go get a defense? And then which defense? Well, we already know which defense. It's the Giants defense. That was Chris's defense of the week. So it's going to be the Giants defense.
Unless you are in a really tough spot with the running back position, Madison is kind of my pick there. I don't think he's ever going to be anything more than a 10-point-ish guy. I don't think you're ever excited about starting Madison. I think some of these other guys have more upside than that, can have really big weeks. If you're out on ETN, I guess I could understand that argument, but I'm not, at least to that degree, where I would personally, I would keep ETN over Madison. But I would understand that. As far as the defenses themselves, I think I want to go with Atlanta there, especially with the Saints, not being kind of there yet with the offensive line situation and, coming off of a firing. We'll see, but.
Yeah, I hear you. That it would be Madison for me too, because the problem is we don't like they're changing their whole offense. Madison hasn't been good. We have no idea what they're going to do offensively. They may go through a full committee. We have no idea. So I'm with you on the whole Madison drop. Another question got in here right before the show. Got Leggett or Bateman at the flex this week. Remember, Bateman's playing tomorrow night against Cincinnati. Chris, what do you got in this one?
Yeah, I'm not loving either option, but I would probably lean toward Leggett. He's the guy who has the least targets, or at least guys that you to kind of compete for targets. He's about 30% target share when he's been the starter and receiver, when you've had Thielen out and Deontay Johnson been out. So Xavier Leggett's been pretty much the only other receiver you have. A lot of other guys rotating in, but I go with him a little bit higher than Bateman. I know Bateman's had some good games here or there, but you just can't trust what he's going to do for this offense. I go with Leggett.
I'm actually going to take the shot with Bateman. I think this is Bateman's last hurrah before Deontay Johnson completely takes over the job. So, and it's against Cincinnati, who does give up the big play, and that's where Bateman's been able to thrive. So I'm going to take the shot on Bateman there. Don't disagree. Volume-wise, Leggett's probably in a better shape for that one, but I'm going to take the upside play there in Cincinnati. All right, with that, we will end on that note. Guys, make sure you have a good weekend this weekend, and check us out tomorrow at 8 p.m. at F Advice Network on Twitter and on Facebook, and we'll see you later. Hey there, I want to thank you for watching Operation Domination today. And if you're enjoying the show, there are some ways you can help support us. You can go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination and leave us a 5-star review. And you can do this on any podcast platform or on our YouTube page when you go to @FF Advice Network. This completely helps out the show be able to grow, and also leave us comments to let us know how we can curtail the show to you, because you are the most important member of the show. So again, go to podchaser.com/Operation Domination to leave a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you listen or watch the show, and we'll help better serve you. Actually end. I hate this thing. End it.
Don't hit